In today's podcast of Data for All, the Data Celebration. Welcome to the Data for All podcast. I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Yilden, where we want to empower you to think different with data.
And on today's podcast, we are going to celebrate getting to our 20th episode. And Charlie, do you ever think we were going to get this far?
I knew we were going to get this far.
Yeah. And 20 for us means 40 weeks. And so we have been doing this podcast thing now for 40 weeks.
Yeah, coming up on a year.
It is. And it's been a lot of fun. So we thought it'd be good to do the recap, even update you all on where we are on our data journey, because it's definitely now has two new letters in it, an A and an I. We've really ramped it up there. And then also, for our first time, we are going to have listener questions.
Yeah, we've gotten popular enough to actually get responses when we ask for questions, and I'm excited about that.
Isn't that great? So we are. Let's just dive right in. So should we start with a little bit of a recap of what we did?
So tell me, Charlie Apigian.
Oh,
how did you enjoy this last season?
Well, to put everything into perspective, the first 10 episodes was our foundation, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so it was about teaching you how to demystify data, what was storytelling, how do we use data, what is data privacy, who owns your data. So we had all of the major components of data in those first 10 episodes. So for those that haven't listened, please go back. And each one gives you a little bit new nugget for your foundation, your data foundation. And then we thought we would try different things for these next 10. And the first thing that we went into was this idea of diving into an industry. So we did the Data In series. So you'll see a lot of our names include data in, and then in an industry or technology. And then we had a couple other ones like processing your data, which was a lot of fun. We really got behind the scenes on your thought process there. And, just some other really cool things. What were some of the fun things that you recall from our last 10 episodes, or 9 episodes, I guess, since this is the 10th of season 2?
So I really liked sharing my personal processes and stuff, because it's something that I feel like it's good for people to know about. But having said that, though, my absolute favorite parts were the guests we had this year.
It was, but I am going to just tell you about episode 13 was processing your data. I still use the same process that I developed after that episode.
Really?
Yeah, so the capturing really changed the way I do things. So I now have the exact same way I capture, and I use it in my Drafts app, and then I process after that, and I pretty much have become decent enough at it. And the most important part, what I learned from that episode is capture, and then worry about where it goes after that. Don't try to capture and process at the same time.
Okay. So it's been helpful then.
Oh, incredibly helpful. So for you out there, I mean, seriously, it was a game changer for me. I feel like I'm not losing those thoughts anymore, where I would have a thought and go, oh, but I don't want to process that into, and so then I wouldn't put it in. And so just that, I've got it, put it in there. Even just the simple things like want to buy storage units for my garage or whatever, putting it into Drafts, no matter what. So I'll have one list of 10 things by the end of the day. And then some of it's like, oh yeah, that's right. And it might be just look up a website.
Yeah.
Little things like that. Knock those 3 things out and email this person. Say thank you to that person. Little things like that is going in as a capture, and it's been incredibly helpful.
Nice. So do you feel overall that your less things are slipping through the cracks?
That's it. And it's not that the big things were getting done, the little things I was missing.
Yeah.
And the little things are now getting done. And a lot of times it's literally a follow-up email.
Yeah.
You had a meeting, and the minute I'm done with that meeting, I'll say, send a thank you note. Because if I don't, I will forget to send that thank you note. And that note is basically an email. But
it is, but it's important for the connection in networking and stuff.
And I just do it now, and I put it in the same spot. And most of the time, I don't even process it because they're 2 seconds to get done.
Yeah.
And so I just get them done when I have the actual time. And because Drafts, that app is so easy to enter and capture, I'm able to do that. So thank you for that. Really, the way you do that is simple, where everybody can get something out of that. And the ability to capture, then process, to me, was the part that I really got some good stuff out of.
So it lowered the threshold to get started.
That's right. That's right. So going to the guests. So the guests that we had were basically part of our Data In series. We did data in music, data in bourbon, which we'll talk about here. We added guests for our Chat GPT and Future AI. That was Paul Vinton. And by the way, data in bourbon was Kenny Coleman from Pursuit United and also the Bourbon Pursuit podcast. Trevor Hinesley from Soundstripe was our data in music. We brought in our one good friend, Colin Callahan, to sit in with us on the Data Rumble as well. And then we brought a true pro, we like to say, with us on the Data in News episode, which, sorry, Jen Duck, who is the person that we brought on, we're tired of getting all the compliments about you for that episode. You were just so good and so insightful. We definitely we had a blast with our guests during season 2.
Absolutely. Like I find us to be in a very fortunate position to be able to talk to so many knowledgeable people.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we talked to Trevor Hinesley, and it was interesting. We asked him what it was like to be a CTO. And a week later, he won CTO of the Year in Nashville.
He did.
So how cool was that? I mean, we've got all these nice little coincidences. For example, we talked Chat GPT with Paul Vinton, and then a week later, GPT-4 comes out and just changes our world.
But the eerie thing about that is that on the show, we were talking about it would take a year to make big impacts. And he was like, nope, 6 months. Hang on, let me try. No, 6 months? No, I'm bad at
that was pretty
terrible.
Bad. Let me say, I can't do it.
Just give it a shot. Give it a shot.
I can't.
Do it. I just did it, and it was terrible. So you can do it better, I'm sure.
There's things that Paul, and so Paul is somebody that I've gotten to know over the last 6 or so months. Incredibly insightful, very futuristic in his thoughts. And if you listen to that episode 15, a big laugh, a very big laugh. No, mate, I can't do it. I can't do it. I literally had to add mate because it's the only word I know. That's not a knife. That's all I think I could say. Yeah, that's So I can only do a Crocodile Dundee. I can't do an Australian accent.
He predicted he was better at it than we were at the time, for sure.
And I now 100% believe. And again, we recorded that episode back on February 26th. So 6 months means October 26th. I'm with them.
Yeah, I think I am now too.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where, again, we're at that point where at my university, we're on summer break. And I'm telling faculty, when you come back in the fall, the world is going to be different.
Yeah, best keep your learning hat on during the summer.
That's right. And I'll tell you this, your students are learning.
Oh, yeah.
And they're getting good.
That's that's a completely separate subject, but the people who are getting ahead are definitely playing with and learning right now.
Yeah.
Playing with and learning AI.
Yeah, so let's go back to Jen Duck, and she was our Data in News one, and that's one we've gotten a lot of great comments about because, first of all, she was great on audio and video, of course, but her background just was amazing.
Yeah, you don't win Emmys by accident, right?
That's right, and but the more important thing is she cares about it.
She does.
Like she really does, and to give her some major kudos, 2 nights ago, there was a premiere of that video that she was talking about that she was making.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I couldn't go because my son had a baseball game, but we were a sponsor of it. The Belmont Data Collaborative was. It was a huge success. They had a great showing, and I'll be watching it here in the next day or two, but it's about North Nashville. It's called Exit 207. And then it has another tagline to it, but Exit 207 is the exit on I-40 that you get off.
Okay.
That is the old historic North Nashville area that, again, used to be highly diverse, mostly black-owned businesses that are now gone because they put a highway there.
Yeah, right.
And so it really just talks about that area, a lot of the history there, a lot of the amazing people that are still there. And she highlighted them in an amazing documentary. I can't wait. And we'll definitely, if it's out, I don't know if it's going to be publicly available yet, because it goes to all the film festivals and things. And she's going to try to win some, or she's done it in the past with Belmont projects.
That's cool.
So she had one 2 years ago. I think that was about more like COVID and things like that.
Yeah.
That one won a ton of awards. And again, these are students working on it.
Well, go Jen Duck then.
I know. And my data is in it. And that's what I
Nice.
love more than anything else, for sure. So I like it when the data is the star.
Yeah,
For sure.
Another thing that I like to talking about with Jen is like her perception of social media behavior and all of that kind of stuff is definitely something we're going to have her back on and talk about, because there's a lot of data to be sorted out with that.
Yeah. Should we go down your favorite episode? And there's a lot of sarcasm when I say that.
Yeah, no, I feel the sarcasm.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we tried some stuff this season, and the major thing that we tried was remote podcasting. And I found out that my equipment was woefully inadequate for good sound.
So before we go down that route, before we go down the major degradation of us, can we talk about the real star of this podcast?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that is behind the scenes, we have our good friend Jeremy that does all of our mixing audio type stuff and has done every episode. Technically every episode, because we made him fix one too, and the one we're about ready to talk about here, and that's why we sound so amazing. I mean, we do have the best sounding one out there. Our voices are mixed correctly. You know, you don't realize those little things like the heavy breathing, the little like the. Psst, psst, and I shouldn't have done that because that's hard.
Plosives and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And he's able to really make us sound so good. So
Absolutely.
That's important. But we wanted to do data in bourbon. It was going to be a fun topic. And the reason that we did it is one of my favorite ones to listen to about bourbon is called Bourbon Pursuit. It's the #1 bourbon podcast in the world. And they're up in Lexington, and Kenny Coleman, first of all, a very nice guy, very gracious to want to come down, but he's in Lexington and he's a data guy.
Yeah.
And because of that, we thought data in bourbon, let's give it a try. The software was fine.
Yeah.
But you forget about acoustics, like there's some things on the walls in here that you see, well, they're there for sound dampening.
Yeah.
We were not dampening sound. We weren't dampening anything. Yeah, right behind you, right there, that black. Yeah, there
There's
you go.
some over there too.
So with that, I was in my brand new house, and I was doing it in the kitchen,
Yeah.
which was not smart. And you were in a house that was under construction.
Yeah. Also in my kitchen/office.
Yes.
And so the sound was pretty terrible. And at the beginning of it, I was doing a better job of staying closer to the microphone, but I also wasn't talking much at the beginning. And we thought it would be a good idea to have a sip of his bourbon while he was on the show. But then a sip for me turned into like a more than a sip, we'll call it.
You had a coffee mug. I couldn't tell how much was in it.
Yeah, there was a lot of mistakes made that day. And so pouring by sound, never a good idea.
Oh, especially when it's a little bit dark in the room and you can't really see.
I'm using a dark mug.
You were using a dark, I think it was a blue mug, right? Something like that. And I was using the sniffer, so you could see how much I was drinking. And I didn't start until I think maybe minute 20 or 30. And you had a head start on me.
I had a bit of a head start, yeah.
Yeah. But the stuff that we went over, still pretty good. Probably not exactly what we were hoping to cover.
Yeah. I cringed a lot at myself. Like I knew what was coming. And I still, every time towards the end of that episode, when I would jump in with like you're not going to tell me this or something like that, I would just I physically cringed. Like I would, it wasn't the best.
Well, that's why
for me.
Yeah, we know that practice makes us better.
Yeah.
I think we're better today than we were in episode 14, which was Data in Bourbon, which is our #1 most listened to episode.
That hurts me so bad.
got the word bourbon in it. What can you do?
I know but our most popular episode is easily my worst.
So do you think it's because you're so bad? I'm just kidding. I was any good. I was Mr. Slappy during mine. I definitely was way too close. Actually, I was, because I didn't have a good screen. I didn't have a screen on it, so I was way too close. And we did give it to Jeremy, and Jeremy cleaned it up. If you actually listened to the raw that we were trying to fix, it was different.
Yeah.
It was definitely cleaned up by our good friend.
So going back to that, Jeremy Ferguson, who owns and operates Battle Tape Records, took our really, really crappy audio and pulled, with the way it sounds right now and the way it sounded before, it's a miracle. So we're data folks, but we're still learning a lot about audio video for sure.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And a little bit more inside shop. People don't probably realize the one thing that we do is we are right now looking at our cell phones, and that's how we record our video that goes on our YouTube channel. We do use the audio that Jeremy creates for that. So if you look at, and I'm creating those, I've had a lot of experience creating video for academics or in academia over the years. So I'm dabbling, with some very basic stuff, trying to keep it, to the basics. If you notice on our last episode, we had 3 different views. We had one straight on. We're trying to get better. But we pretty much go with 2 views, and we're still the amateurs there.
We had some technical difficulties with this episode with the 3 views.
For sure. So the other one, so you had processing your data was your kind of your hobby one, and then data in home automation was really mine.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of fun with that one. Any updates on, we recorded that back in March, and now we're sitting here in May. Anything new for you? Because you're almost done with the renovation in your house.
Yeah, it's I have a bedroom again. I have a bathroom attached to that bedroom, but most importantly, I have a kitchen again. Oh, yeah. And I went by there, and it absolutely, I would say it was worth the wait. It will be. I'm still too close right now to say that 100%, gotcha. But it will be very soon. My favorite part about the whole remodel is we put a steam unit in our shower. That is so cool. I've been doing it every day, and it is a game changer. Like, I like the sauna better personally, but getting hot has so many benefits. Like, it raises your metabolism. It causes heat shock. It causes heat shock to your body, which creates protein synthesis. It makes a lot of enzymes in your body just be like, oh, we need to make some protein. So it's really good. It's really good overall, and it's making me feel good too. Well, I keep hearing about ice baths and things like that, but you're going the opposite way, and I like that better. The idea of the hot shower. I'm a big hot shower friend because these bones are old these days, as you all know. I'm hit the while this one I will be I'll be 2 or so weeks after my 50th birthday. Yeah. So as of recording, he's not 50. That's right. When so I'm still young. I'm still young. Yeah. When you hear this, he will be 50. Yeah. But I put that hot shower on to get those muscles loose and get the ers and the ahs out of these old bones of mine. I swear. Well, if you listen to the sports betting episode, you can literally hear that he can't say the word 50 when it comes to his age. But I got a kick out of that for sure. Yeah. Oh, well. But going back to the home automation, I will give you something I'm contemplating. Okay. I'm thinking of going to the thermostat home automation. Oh, yeah? Yeah, the smart thermostat. And the biggest reason is the ones that my builder put in my house do not have an auto feature for cool and heat. What do you mean? So it's either heat or cool. Okay. So you go to bed and you want it to be a little bit cold, but you don't want it to be freezing in the morning. Yeah. And I can't wait. I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and turn on the heat. So I want to just say I want it 70 degrees. And whether the heat or the cooling, which a smart thermostat does, and most do these days, like the same unit, there's another version of it. I got the cheaper one. It's the one that they put in. So I either have to put it on heat or on cool. And I can't have it flip back and forth. So, and is it a physical switch? Well, buttons, and so I got to click a button to make it go heat and then up and down. And you can do a schedule, but it's awful. They did the, so you were talking about that last time. You're like, I can do a schedule on mine. Yeah. But I guess you hadn't tried it at that point. Yeah. And it's not what you want. Yeah. So they put a new thermostat upstairs because we got 2 units because it runs better like that. And it's a physical toggle switch to go between heat and cold. So
I haven't seen one of those since one of my old houses.
I dare say it's probably as cheap as they can get right now.
Yeah. But and so I'm going. I don't think I'm going to go Nest. Mm-hmm. I've done Nest. I had no problem with Nest. I want to go Ecobee. Ecobee. Okay. It's probably the number one competitor to Nest.
Okay.
There's also a Sensei, Sensei. Again, will be in the show notes. And I'm not sure which one I want to go with yet. The Ecobee has way more than I need. It'll add like sensors like for motion, and it's like, no, just help me with my thermostat. I got the other stuff already. I don't need the other stuff. Mm-hmm. So I need to just find my sweet spot. I don't need the one that's $249. I need one that I want it to be under at least 200. I'd rather be closer to 100. I don't know if I can get that. And so we talk about data perception, like in our last episode. Again, this goes to, I don't want to spend the extra $30 on a smart thermostat, but yeah, I'll go to a game tonight and then go out afterwards and spend $150. It's no big deal.
$30 in some contexts is a lot, and others it's a drop in a bucket.
That's right. So if you look back, I'm going to go to our data journey kind of thing, because first of all, we didn't talk about the episode that was.
Yeah.
Or was not, I should say.
That's how we started this season.
That's right. So I think it was January what, 8th? When did we...
we recorded it right after the first of the year.
Right after the first of the year, that's right. So I think we did do the Data Rumble the same day as that one. I've got it. No, we recorded that one, I think, on its own, and unfortunately, we were not able to use it.
So to give you some juice on this one, we interviewed somebody who works for a big streaming platform, and the streaming platform decided that it was not to be published. And out of respect for the guests that we had, we decided that we would go with that, because technically we could do what we want, but we try not to be big old a-holes about stuff. And so we would respect that person and their time. And so we mentioned it before, but we have the band episode. And if this streaming entity ever stops existing, then everybody will get to hear it.
Or we just feel like, it doesn't matter. But the truth is, the person that we had is a great friend, and we're going to respect that.
Absolutely.
And the stuff that was interesting, we can talk about it in future episodes without mentioning the streaming service. But we got into recommender systems and how your preferences really drive what you're going to be recommended, and that could be as simple as even your Amazon cart. Just as much as a streaming service. So we got a little bit, definitely no secret sauce in that episode, nothing incredibly revealing other than a great conversation about how your activity leads to recommendations.
Yeah, I think the biggest insight I got was that they're not necessarily trying to keep you on the platform more, and that is a goal, but the main goal is to get other people to come to the platform.
And to keep your subscription next month, and so that's why they always have to add something that, or have that season that gets you, and then they wait a year for the next one. Of course, it's mostly because of production, but there's got to be reasons. Like I was, talking about it was not an HBO thing, so I can say HBO, but I was looking at HBO and I'm like, why would I keep HBO now? Yeah. Like I'm like, there's no Game of Thrones. There's no, for me at least right now. And like I watched Succession, that was good. And I'm like, it doesn't have a bunch of movies anymore. And it's like, boy, HBO, I'm not sure. But for other people, there might be like 3 or 4 different series. I'm just not watching those right now.
Yeah, that's how I do it. Like we've got HBO right now, but we don't have Apple Plus. And so Silo's about to come out on Apple Plus. And so I'm going to wait until that finishes. And then I haven't seen any of Ted Lasso either. And so I'm going to be...
Ever?
And so I'm going to be watching that, Silo. There was a couple other things on Apple Plus that I was going to watch, but I think that's how you should do it. You subscribe, you watch everything you want to, you stop subscribing unless they can keep you chocked up with content all year. And that's the direction we were going with that conversation in the long run. Is like how do we keep people interested? So I guess I've contradicted myself.
Well, do you have? So I have Apple Plus, and I keep it because of obviously Ted Lasso. Right now, I get all of the MLS games, and I do enjoy watching. Major League Soccer, including of course my Nashville Soccer Club. And I'm starting to watch. I haven't watched Siloed yet, so you're saying that's a good one.
It's just I think the first episode, or I don't know if it's
just
episodic.
Came out.
Yeah, it just came out. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that, and we started something else. My wife and I. So we're gonna keep. But Ted Lasso definitely is a main staple in our house. We're huge soccer fans, so it's an easy one.
Good.
It is. It's cheesy. It's cheesy in a good way.
Yeah.
It's worth it. What's that?
So it's you.
It's me. Is that what you said?
Yeah, you're cheesy in a good way.
And I got really bad puns. Oh, wait for Ted's puns.
You're very punny.
I'm punny, and I know it for sure. So, anyways, that is something we can cover without that in future episodes. It was fun. Our good friend, we might even have him on, and we'll let him grovel for our stuff. But again, we're going out for beers here in the near future. Again, great guy. And so. But anyways, so yes. So in terms of our recap, that was a lot of fun.
Well, we missed the biggest part of the recap, though.
What's that?
The AI stuff.
Oh my gosh.
The fact that we had Trevor on at the beginning of the year when 3.5 was a thing, and then the week after we recorded the episode, 4 came out, and 4 changed everything.
Well, you mean with Paul Vinton?
Well, I'm talking about Trevor, because Trevor was talking about music. Like AI music was soulless and stuff, and I wonder how that's changed after the release of GPT-4.
Yeah, I mean he probably understands and respects because we've talked since then a couple of times.
Okay,
and he's not saying it's wrong or right. It's just he loves the soul of music.
Yeah,
and I think that is really important to think about. And so. The idea of AI, I think, is, again, if you look at when episode 11 came out for us, it was in January. So, this year, we're talking about this year, what's been the big change? It's artificial intelligence. It's AI. It's ChatGPT, especially ChatGPT-4. And both of us, I think, have gone deep into it.
Absolutely. I used Stable Diffusion and Hugging Face to create. So if you look at my profile picture on all of my platforms right now, that is AI generated, and the prompt was professional pixel art photo.
Okay, and you did that with.
I used face hugging to train AI on Hugging Face to train AI on my specific face.
Okay,
and then I used Stable Diffusion to create the environment stuff.
That is really cool, and I've been using Midjourney a lot.
Yeah, you're getting some really good stuff out of Midjourney.
I am, and what's been really fun about Midjourney, there was one night, it was last week. My son, who's getting ready to graduate from high school, said, "Dad, I want to start doing AI generated art." And I'm like, "Cool. Do you want to use Midjourney?" He goes, "How do you know about Midjourney?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've done 2 episodes on AI. Come on now." And so he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, I've already got a Discord server. You want to join it?"
So you impressed a 17-year-old?
I did. I've got my own Discord. When you're almost a number, I'm not saying what the number is.
Yeah.
The number to be named later. And you tell your son you've got a Discord server using Midjourney, you are cool.
Yeah.
No, so he goes, he's like, "Oh, can I join it?" So he joins. Then he wants to create one. So I had to get his own account. And so him and I are now in our own Discord server. We spent the next hour creating art together. Nice. And I was in Nashville at the time. He was down in Murfreesboro. So we were an hour away from each other. But that was my version of gaming with somebody. And we just sat there and talked. But really, we were just chatting back and forth in the Discord server. Yeah. And I'd be like, "Why don't you try this?" And it's like that. And then I would copy and paste what he did and change it a little bit. And we were taking, he wanted to do something with Harambe versus a Jedi. Okay. And so we made that. And it actually was very funny. And, of course, that's what a 17-year-old thinks is funny these days. Yeah. And we did a shark with a birthday hat on. And then I said, "Give me a bulldog/boxer," because that's what my dog was, making it running in the wilderness, looking like it's a Pixar rendering. Okay. And it did a great job, And so those are the things that I think that's been I still, in my data journey, I still get better at telling stories. I still get better at understanding a problem. I'm not getting better at the technical side because I'm where I am there. I know how to do machine learning. I'm a data scientist.
Yeah.
But I'm getting so much better at solving problems with data and understanding the most important components to that. And then the AI part, I love being a novice in it. I love that. I mean, ChatGPT, I'm using it every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And I pay for the subscription so I can get GPT-4 as the engine.
Same.
And we talked about what's the difference between GPT-4 and ChatGPT and the other things that are using it. What are you using ChatGPT for?
So I've used ChatGPT to create a bunch of white papers. I use it for the writing stuff, or I started using it for the writing stuff, for white papers, resumes, emails, like whatever it is that I just slap in a first draft, like a really, really rough first draft, and it'll clean it up. And then all I've got to do is read it and I can send it out. And so I've been using 3.5 mostly for that. But I'm also getting into, with a buddy of mine, like writing a book, like a fiction book. And so it's his ideas, and I'm being an enabler.
Gotcha.
And so we're getting character descriptions, like all kinds of like artistic type stuff that we're using as like the first draft to get over that speed bump of like creativity. And then it's like when Trevor mentioned using the music AI stuff. It's like if you get stuck on one particular piece, like it can break you through that mental block or whatever. And so my buddy is the same way. He's like, I've got all these ideas. How do we, how do you get from point A to point B? And so I'm applying my process stuff to the GPT stuff, and then we're just laying it all out. And so we're kind of doing it in the way right now. It's whatever we feel like, just to kind of get it going and stuff. But eventually, we'll get to where we're putting the story together, and we'll see how it goes.
Wow.
I'm really, I'm excited because I called that part in the beginning. It's like, this is going to enable us to do things that we couldn't do before.
That's right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not our creativity. Like maybe a character has dark hair instead of red hair, and that's something that GPT picked and we just stuck with because it was good enough for us.
Yeah.
But those things don't matter. What matter are the story moments.
Yeah.
Or,
the prompting that you go through, you're still creating that story. It's just the words it's going to help you with. I'm using it more as my editor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I don't think so, but I'll create a sentence and say, can you make this something that everybody can understand?
Yeah.
And then it'll change one word to a more, simplistic word, or it might clean up maybe how I said a sentence. And I'm like, oh, that is better. And that's one that I'll use. Tell me some things about you since January. Anything new in terms of the data thing? Obviously, AI for both of us has been huge. Anything else that you feel season 2 has helped you to evolve through your data journey?
Yeah, like the most surprising thing to me is the perspective that we get talking about it so much. And so the best way to put it is like we're paying attention. And I make an assumption that other people are also paying attention, and I was incorrect with that assumption.
Yes. And
so that was the biggest thing. Like after we had released the GPT-4 episode, I was talking to people who I knew, in my mind, I knew that they knew about AI and that they were actively working with it. They were excited about it. They were having fun with it. They were improving their lives with it. Never touched it. That surprised me more than anything else, is like with all of this stuff going on, and we're actively shouting from as high as we can get, like get on this, and just the number of people who are tech savvy people, like you're a big Apple guy, and I know other people who are like big Apple people as well, and people who are deep in Apple, you would assume would be deep in a lot of different technologies, and apparently that's not the case, and that to me was it changed my perspective of it, because I thought we were all walking in a similar direction, and it turns out that we've got to shepherd more.
Yeah, and I think we could do another episode on AI, especially with this idea of a pause coming. And so there's people on both sides right now, and I sometimes feel like I'm part of that movie. Was it Look Up or whatever? The one where the meteor supposedly coming down.
Oh, I never watched that.
Leonardo DiCaprio was in it, and they're saying that there's going to be a major thing, and nobody would believe them. And so when you talk about AI and how it's going to change the world, but that's not my lifetime. I'm like, oh yeah, it is. It is. Now, I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. I actually just went to Washington D.C. with a big group. And I know we'll talk about it because we're going to talk about privacy stuff here a little bit when we get to listener questions. And one individual, that's his job, is to figure out new technologies. And he's mid-20s, and he is incredibly excited about the future of AI.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and that's great, but then you've got other people that are like, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's some things about it that are going to be hard.
Yeah.
Change is hard.
Well, so based off of the questions we got, those are very relevant things to talk about.
That's right. So why don't we go to the one that talks about the automating of the future one?
Okay.
You want to go to that one?
Yeah.
So we've talked about our recap. We've done a little bit of where we are in our data journey. One thing that we've been able to do now is connect better with people that are listening to the podcast. And again, what we like the most is that we get to talk to each other and others about the things that we love the most, and that's data. And we're glad that we've got people that are willing to listen to us. And so we got a couple of questions that we thought were interesting to add. And so I'm going to go right into the first one, and I'm trying to remember. I'll give the credit for the person that gave it to us here in a second. But the question is, AI is still in its infancy, but if you had to guess, what jobs do you see it automating in the future? So I read that exactly the way it was put to us. I think that was Matt Brown from Memphis that gave us that one, which is one that I think a lot of people are thinking about. So what jobs are going to become automated with AI, and basically what's going to be replaced? And so why don't we ask a ChatGPT what the answer to that is? And of course, you can go out and Google that, and you're going to get a lot of different answers. What are some of your thoughts there?
As far as which jobs will get replaced?
Yeah.
I mean, anything. So when you're looking at a job, the idea of a process or the way you get the job done is going to be the determining factor in what gets automated or not. And so I was in Key West a couple of weeks ago for an industry meeting. And again, I was surprised by the lack of people who are paying attention to GPT, because there's a lot of people there who like to make money, and automation is the way to make money now, since we've got a crunch on services and stuff. But I guess it's head in the sand kind of thing in some ways. But then mostly it's like, people are too busy, I guess, and doing their own hustle to stop and look at it. But this is extremely important. And so if you are an organization that has everything in order, like what it takes from point A to point B and all the things in the middle, or what it takes to get from point A to point B and all the things in the middle in a consistent way with as few one-offs, if you will, then you can automate that job. Yeah,
and I think if it's an automation of some sort, and so we asked ChatGPT, show us the top jobs that will be replaced by AI and the probability of that occurring. So let's put a percentage on it. And it gave us a top 10 list of what those would be. One or two of those, I'm kind of surprised.
Caveat though, GPT-4 can still be wrong, but confidently wrong.
Remember, GPT-4 and ChatGPT is based on the data that's in its model only. And so it's not that it's wrong, it's that it interpreted the data that it has, which is not perfect.
Correct.
Wrong. But most of these, it's going to be hard to say that, especially that top 5. First of all, a telemarketer, if you're going into the job market and saying, I want to be a telemarketer, where I'm going to call people on a phone and expect them to answer, and I'm going to sell them something. That's a telemarketer, right?
Yeah.
That job's gone.
As somebody who's been a type of telemarketer before, I don't think you choose to be in that job.
That's right.
I think that's just where you wind up.
Yeah, and the fact is the ability to chat in different ways, and definitely in an automated way, is going to completely probably get rid of the telemarketer, and nobody's probably complaining about that. The people doing the telemarketing and the people that are being solicited are happy that one will go away.
So from a telemarketer perspective, sitting in front of your computer with an auto dialer, not fun.
Yeah, I can see that. So that's number one. I'm good with that. Data entry clerks, I think we're all pretty certain that if it's on a piece of paper, you don't need somebody to type that in for you.
Yeah, that's fair.
Easy enough. Insurance underwriters. We have a lot of insurance companies that have headquarters or regional headquarters here in the area. State Farm has a big one. That's a lot of people that are employed there. That's a pretty big one.
Yeah. Underwriters, it makes sense though, because underwriting is just making sure that a loan underwriter makes sure that the loan fits all the criteria. And if something's missing, they're like the quality control before it actually gets submitted. And so that makes a lot of sense, because you want to have somebody, or you want to have something as close to 100% accurate as possible. And AI can be more accurate than a person. And that sucks for people in this case. And so I'm not going to jump into it right now, but at the end, I want to come back around to, like, this has changed for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that we understand, like, we're not talking about people losing their jobs lightly. But also, it's not just people losing their jobs. There's a lot of change in the types of jobs coming up. And so what you do now is not what you're going to do in the future, but it'll be adjacent to it, but working with AI.
Yeah, and I think somebody said it best to me. It's the person, AI is not going to replace you, but you will be replaced by somebody using AI.
Yeah.
And I think that is where we're going with things, because if it took you 10 hours to code a project and it now takes you 2, are they going to give you those 8 hours and say, go have fun? Or are they going to get rid of 4 people?
Yeah.
And that's the hard reality of what's going to happen.
Like where I work, we like to say that we're a family and stuff like that. And we try to be as close to a family as possible. But ultimately, it's a business.
Yeah, it's not a charity.
And I think we're on the very empathetic end, or as far as empathy can go in business, we're there. But there's other people that I know that they'll replace you in a heartbeat if they can make $1.
Yeah, and that's going to be a hard one. So on the list also, we've got, after insurance underwriters, payroll clerks, bank tellers. What are your thoughts on those two?
Maybe payroll clerks, yes. Bank tellers, not so much, because I think the only reason bank tellers exist right now is to keep old people company.
There's something to that. It is the experience part, right?
Yeah.
I want to feel a trust. I don't trust the internet. I don't trust technology. So until that goes away, and I think it could be 20 years.
Yeah.
You think of it that way, but the way things are accelerating, who knows? My 79-year-old mom needs to go see a bank teller when things are bad. She still does a hand register for her checks. Wow. She still writes a check at the grocery store. So we can't assume everybody's like us. Remember, know your audience, and the audience is not you. Yeah. I haven't, I don't write checks. I haven't talked to a bank teller in 20 years.
Me either. Well, I mean, that's not true, but I haven't had a relationship with a bank teller.
That's a good point. And 20 years ago, I definitely did, because when I worked in a small business, we went almost every day.
Yeah.
And that was a different world at that time. You're right. That's a customer service representative at that point.
It's a human being that needs to sit in the seat to maintain business and quality, or not quality, but experience and culture.
Yeah, and that goes to the ones that are kind of surprising to me on this list, which includes receptionist, retail, cashiers, and then customer service representatives. I think the customer service representative is because ChatGPT or chatbots can replace them, and that makes sense.
Customer service and customer support, totally different story. Like, you can absolutely do that with AI. So the way we're looking at it, because we're hitting in my world now, because we do customer support, like chatbots can be tier 1, meaning that they can, so like, what's your issue? Is it something I can easily pull from a knowledge base? Is it a status that I can easily pull from a piece of software? But then tier 2 escalations, which we answer tier 2 from the very beginning, because we're selling an experience, and it costs more because of that. And so we go to market with that. If you want a person to answer the phone and resolve your issue, this is what you do. But that doesn't mean that we're not also going to start adding AI to the thing too, because we can have that AI touch for a lot of different customers that are money focused. But if you're experience focused, then you pay a premium and you get the other service. And there's room for both to exist at the same time, and it can even be blended. So you can have a deployment or a support service that's partially AI and partially people. But even with the AI piece, there's jobs around that because they've got to build and maintain the knowledge base that the AI draws from and make sure that when the AI is answering questions that it's actually correct.
Makes complete sense. And so there's a couple of last ones on here because I don't want to stay on this question for our whole time. Manufacturing, assembly workers. Yeah, there's a lot of automation there, a lot of robots. That's actually what my son is going to school for. He wants to, he's in mechatronics, which is basically robotics.
That's a mechatronics?
Mechatronics.
That's amazing.
That's his degree.
That is the coolest. That's the coolest degree I've heard. That sounds so much like, do you know what Gundam is? It doesn't, never mind, it doesn't matter. For the people who know what Gundam is, like that, they also probably think mechatronics as a degree sounds cool. And
so he doesn't want to create the robot. He wants to take the robot and use it. That's what mechatronics is.
Okay.
So, he likes the idea of automating a production line, things like that. And so there's some to that. Taxi and truck drivers is the last one on here. What do you think? Are we close to that?
So with the limitations in technology right now would be 5G, like 5G high spectrum or high frequency, like millimeter wave stuff, because we need the low latency. But once that exists, then AI can do that for sure.
There we go. I was trying to, so I asked ChatGPT why it said taxi and truck drivers and are at risk of being replaced by AI due to the rapid advancements in autonomous vehicle technology. I still say we're not there yet.
No,
and I don't think that's a 1 or 2 year thing.
So the bottleneck is, like, briefly, the bottleneck is the millimeter wave. Millimeter wave is what allows autonomous driving because you got to think of safety. And because the ping is so low, like I can get a 2 to 3 millisecond ping off of millimeter 5G, but millimeter 5G goes from here to about 30 feet away in a solid signal. And if there's a raindrop between it, it kills it.
Yeah.
And it can't go through glass. There's a lot of things it can't do. So our infrastructure would be way heavier in order for us to use it, but that's not to say that it can't happen in the future.
Yeah.
Like there's some intermediate solutions that could lead to autonomous driving, but most of that's onboard processing and not shared processing. So it wouldn't necessarily be an AI model from the beginning. Like I agree with you though, it's still a ways away.
It is, and climate and weather and things like that are in there. And so the infrastructure is huge. We are going down the battery route a lot quicker than I think the autonomous. Again, I'm somebody that drives a Tesla and love the vehicle. I've had it for 2 years now, and it gets smarter every day. It really does. But I don't trust it in a town because humans are involved and imperfect roads are involved.
Yeah.
And so there's so much. There's cones on every street I drive. And so that makes it hard. Okay, I want to make sure that we get through some questions. Let's go more rapid style. Okay. We have one more here from Matt. We'll add it in because it's a good one. Okay. It's about data protection laws. So we don't want to spend a lot of time on this one, but are there differences between the U.S. and the EU?
So EU or the European Union has GDPR, which we talked about in previous episodes. And that's the gold standard for the globe right now as far as data protection and privacy goes. And their big thing is the right to be forgotten. Your data is yours. And so here in the U.S. recently, when we had the episode on data privacy in the U.S., is it CCPA?
It's CC something.
It's the California one. That was the most comprehensive policy for data privacy in the U.S. and it still is to a degree. But you were telling me the other day that 9 states had added stuff.
Have it passed with 6 in place. California still by far is the most stringent by far. Tennessee just a couple of weeks ago actually passed theirs.
Yeah, and that surprises me because I didn't know about that. And so the second you said that, I was like, well, let me go look at it. And so I looked up the differences, and we talked about the California Privacy Act before. And so just to compare GDPR with Tennessee, for example, there's a lot of things that are similar. So you still have the right to be forgotten. You have the you have the ability to request what your data is being used for.
Yeah.
They have to tell you if it's sold now, and so there's a lot of good things in there. But really, the difference between us and the EU is the teeth to it.
Yeah.
And so if you mess up here in in Tennessee, it's a $25,000 fine per instance. If you mess up in Europe, it's a up to 10 million euro fine.
Whoa.
Or 2% of your gross ad revenue over the previous year, and it's whichever's higher.
Okay.
And that's for a minor incident. And a major incident is double that on both sides. And so there's a clear incentive to not mess up in Europe, whereas here in the U.S., and this is kind of how we are, like businesses will make a decision that it's out of policy because they save more money than the fines cost.
Gotcha.
And so that's kind of where this is too. And so, because the bare minimum, you have to process 100,000. So if you're not selling data, you have to process 100,000 people's data per year. And then if you are selling data, it's 25,000 people per year.
Okay.
And so if you're a small business, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't even have to worry.
Or a
about
nonprofit.
Well, that's the exception piece that we'll get to. But in Europe, it's everybody. If you touch data, you deal with this.
Yeah.
And then in Tennessee, there's lots of exceptions too. So to go through it, it's government, healthcare data covered by HIPAA, finance, nonprofits, higher ed, insurance, scientific data, and that's just the top ones. But there's 22 exceptions in total,
or anything else,
basically.
Yeah. And I like I said, I was just in DC, kind of just talking. We were all there as the technology councils get together. Nashville has a really big one, probably the biggest and the best in the country, led by Alex Curtis, who's amazingly a huge advocate for technology. We went and talked to senators, U.S. reps. They all agree there needs to be a U.S. Data Privacy Act. They're kind of far away from it getting passed, and it's politics. It's 100% politics. The people in California want it to be stronger because they want to match more of what they have.
Yeah.
But right now, what's really making people fearful is at some point, if that doesn't happen at the U.S. level, that means you're going to have 50 different state policies that you have to adhere to.
Yeah, and I imagine some businesses will move states because of the strictness or lack thereof.
They're doing it now. You know, because if you're in a state where you do have that, and you can move right across the border to one that doesn't, you know, now it's where your customer is. It's where you do business. So if you're an internet company and you're nationwide, you now have to adhere to those 9 states.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because so Tennessee requires you to have a data controller, is what they call it, and the data controller is responsible for setting up the visibility to all the policies, and they have to also create either an email address, a phone number, or a website or something where you can go request what their policies are, how they use your data, and then you can also request them to delete your data, except in Tennessee, they do not have to delete your data. All they have to do is anonymize it, or if it's a part of an aggregate data, they can keep it too.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, there's a lot to come in that area. Let's get to other ones. We had one from Colin, and he asks, where do I start with regard to getting insights from my data? So I have thoughts there. You want to start?
Well, to put it into perspective, Colin is a business owner, right?
Yes.
So I feel like he and I have similar perspectives or potential perspectives in that we start with a problem. Once you have a problem, then the next step you take is to look at all of the data that's coming in. Can it answer the question? Can it give you insights into where to go with the data based off of very specific questions? Because we've talked about it before. Once you go in to answer a question, 5 more come up.
Yep.
And so that's what truly leads to insight. But that first question being answered properly means that you have to have a handle on your data. And if your data can't answer that one question adequately, it's how do I create the data that can answer that question? So for example, if you're a help desk agent at G Squared, your job is dated out, for lack of a better word, because we see everything you do. We see every action you take. It's like you were on the phone. It took you this long to pick up the phone. You were on the phone for this long, and then we use that as averages. But then we have mid-level jobs that were not qualified, meaning that like we didn't have standards for how long this should take and that should take and all that kind of stuff. And going into the pandemic, our problem was like, how do we manage those people remotely and understand if they're being effective or not? And so we had to create data around we call them lead metrics. We had to create lead metrics that we could then share with the employees and say, as long as you're doing, you're within these lead metrics, then you're completely fine. And so I imagine that's where he would go, but that's my very business oriented approach to it. What would you say?
Well, obviously I have literally like systems and practices. I teach it. And I do everything as, this, I say it's called the data mindset, but it's if you don't set it up initially correct before you get the data and then get the data and clean it in a certain way that creates the insight. So I go through and if I establish, what is a dilemma first, then that means I'm establishing what the real goal is. And everything has to go back to my goal and everything that I do. Now, the goal is not something I can usually measure. The goal is customer satisfaction. All right. What does that mean? Well, I then create a key result that helps me measure customer satisfaction. And you have to come up with those. And so it's a lot of times it's what I would say is problem driven or data driven when I'm creating an insight. Because sometimes all you're doing is exploratory stuff. And so, being a data science guy, I can use different techniques that show correlations, show differences, show clusters. And so I let that sometimes drive my insights. Like I just have a data set of marketing data, and I'm looking for people that are willing to invest in green long-term investments.
Okay.
It's a problem. I'm working with an investment banking company, and that's what I needed to look at. So I have some measures that show whether you would donate and, the different stuff from a marketing perspective. Then I just use cluster analysis to give me my insight. And I let the data drive the insight in that case. And so I got some really good results from that. And so now I could say the person that's willing to invest in a green, that has money to do it, that has discretionary funds, is this person. And by the way, is not the 65-year-old. It's more like the 40 to 50-year-old right now in the data. And I only took the state of Tennessee and looked at it that way. That was data-driven.
Yeah.
Problem-driven then is going back to that goal, and you have to really, really focus on the fact that I'm trying to achieve something and stay hyper-focused on that, because you can, if all you're doing is exploring, that's a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
But if you stay focused on a specific goal, usually you get to that. And the one thing I tell people, no matter what, is if you have no idea what to do something that usually leads to what you actually need. Yeah.
So I was going to jump in and be like, oh yeah, cluster analysis.
Oh, we'll do k-means and hierarchical clustering at some point. Of course. No.
But so that's exactly the reason why I recommend that most businesses start looking into hiring a data scientist, because we have the problems. Like the way I just approach it is the problem driven thing you're talking about. But I'd really like it if I had an insight driven type person.
Yeah.
And because they can just bring me things proactively that will make the company better or to make the situation better. And just having somebody dig in constantly to find those little nuggets.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the way of the future.
Yeah. And it's something that, as I've gotten into it, I always notice when I use good methods and I clean data correctly and I keep the data that's most relevant, when I get a result, I can usually make sense of it. Yeah. Like when I did my hypertension thing, and 3 things on food insecurity came up as the top things. It made sense that people that do not have good food available to them in their community have higher hypertension or have higher diabetes. It's a community problem. It's not an individual problem. The data spoke to me before, I knew that. And then I went and looked at how many grocery stores were in that area, how many fast food places. But I didn't start there because I didn't know that's where I needed to start.
Yeah.
I was thinking I needed to look at insurance things and sidewalks. And the truth was, how many grocery stores are there? And data showed me that.
I like the you need to write this down if you haven't already. But if you're not doing anything, do something.
Yeah, that is. I learned that because I'm an academic.
Yeah.
People would give me data and say, I have no idea what that data says. You tell me. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so then I would give them one or two data nuggets.
Yeah.
And then they'd say, oh, wow, you can do that. And then they give me 18 questions. And I'm like, that's why I'm always in beta. It's like, just start.
Yeah.
Just start. Don't assume it's the end, right? All you're doing is starting. It's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
It just, going back to one of my tenets. And I think that's so important. Let's keep going. And I'm looking at questions. If you have one, I've got one that I want to ask, but I want to give you a chance too out of any of these.
Well, so Jason Hayden asks, what are our thoughts on the open letter asking to pause AI development past the level of GPT-4? And so I see here that you have some thoughts on that, but my immediate thought is that this is a very fear-based response that's not really grounded in reality for the most part. There are valid concerns in changing the workforce too fast and running into an unemployment issue, and then we've got to worry about the government catching up. Mm-hmm. But I think they're overestimating like exactly where the rest of the country is, in the same way that I was overestimating the amount of people that were excited about AI.
Yeah.
Like businesses, from my perspective, and even on the enterprise side, because I am a small business, or I work for a small business, and I work in an industry that's small, medium-sized businesses, but our clients are enterprise businesses, and they don't know anything. Like they can't coordinate quick enough right now to do anything with it, and so that will be the bottleneck. And so you may come into a situation where a lot of smaller companies start to take over because they are AI enabled. But then there's a lot of like growth pains that those companies are going to go through, because how do you scale to 1,000 employees? How do you spend your marketing budget when you're 10 times what you were 2 years ago? Like there's a lot of issues that are gonna have to be sorted out, and it's going to be slower. And so from the valid perspective, I think that's I don't worry about it as much, but the fear-based stuff really pisses me off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think they're jumping way too quickly. And the one thing that you hear more than anything is, listening to a couple of other podcasts that scared me. Mm-hmm. They keep saying that if there are 10 players that are part of the AI space, and 9 of them do what's right, there's always that one that's going to go off and do harm, let's say. And therefore the other 9 now follow. Yeah. Because, they want it, everybody wants to do good, but that one will lead everybody down because they're the ones that will make the most money. They'll be the ones that become the superpower. And that's what we're going to have to watch out for. I think where people are talking about the need for a pause is the ability for AI to learn from itself. Yeah. Which means they don't need us anymore. And when you look at something that doesn't need the human civilization to thrive, there's a problem. I think right now we are at that fear spot just as much as we are at that hope spot, and we don't know what the middle is.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are fear-mongering right now too, because so some of the people I know that are keeping up with it and excited about it, they're listening to these podcasts where they're talking about, like there are things that AGI, which is generative AI, is like it's doing that wasn't expected. Fair. Yep. But they're making a huge jump from like being able to do a couple of things, or maybe a lot of things that we weren't expecting, to general AI.
That's right.
And general AI is like that's where there's appropriate amounts of fear that should be placed, but we're not even close to that.
Yeah, and I think let's say that's a to be continued one, and so we really don't have a yes, no, but I think we're both under the assumption that a pause is unlikely.
It's unlikely, and it would like I said, it would piss me off if we paused. If we pause innovation just because people don't want to try, you lose me there.
Yeah. I'll ask one from Raymond Yates. So Raymond is a former student of mine. Okay. And he's one that continually is looking for new skills. He's he's going to be a lifelong learner. He reaches out to me every now and then. And so he reached out with some questions when we made some an inquiry out there. And the one that I'm going to bring up, because I think this relates to a lot of people, is looking at how to build skills. Does it make more sense to look at certifications as opposed to post-secondary, or should the two go together? And so do you have any thoughts on certifications versus post-secondary at this point? I mean, we've talked about it a little bit on here.
I think certifications start off well-intended, but in the end, they're just money grabs. And that's every single cert that I've ever come across has done that. Whether it be what's the computer thing that everybody's always getting? Well, we'll just talk about stuff that I know directly, like PMP certification, which is project management.
Professional.
Yeah, professional. Like that started off as like a good idea, and it standardized the way you manage projects in the workforce, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But now it's just turned into a self-feeding monster, so to speak, because the PMP, like if I see a PMP in your, and you get on there and you run it like you're a PMP certified project manager, like I probably don't like you.
Because, I assume you're old style.
Yeah, like you don't take into consideration people, because people are the biggest part of project management.
Yeah.
And if you don't manage, if you're just like, I need you to check off this box, I need you to check off this box, you're not going to be a successful project manager. Yeah. And I feel like the certs, good intentions on the front end, and then in the end, it's just like if it's not feeding itself, then it's got to come up with more ways to like it's got to come up with more value. But they dropped off of that more value the second that they became like the industry standard.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I will always play I believe in education. I do. I think even more so than ever, even in the future where data is going to be at our fingertips, the ability to understand and synthesize data is going to be so huge. So problem solving doesn't happen before the age of 18. In my opinion, to the level that you need it for the rest of your life.
Sure.
And so if there's a way to accelerate it in a 4-year period, that's what a higher education degree can do, if it accelerates it. So I think you have certain skills you want to learn when you're 18, how to communicate, how to learn on your own, how to problem solve, how to fail and know what to do next, and then you want to also build skills.
Yeah, but how do you learn that when you're 18 right now? Because there's no place where you can learn all of those things.
That's right. And so we do our best to make a higher education environment to lead to that. I mean, you fail because you have a project and you didn't do well. At least you don't lose your job, right? And so if you're 21 and the only way you learn that stuff is on the job. Everybody says that, but there's a lot of hard knocks that go into that then. Yeah. So if higher ed continues to accelerate the process so that when you're 22, you look different than when you're 18, and you enjoyed going to football games and you're okay spending, there's something fun to be around a bunch of people your same age. I believe in a post-secondary higher ed still to this day if we focus on that. If it's only about skills, oh my gosh, you can learn skills anywhere. Skills are, coding or, all of the stuff that's more technical that you can learn in a YouTube video. We do not need to put that in education. We need to focus on the most important things. We need to build character just as much as we need to build programming skills.
Ooh, but that's a very subjective thing though.
Oh, 100%. And it has to be done outside the classroom in a lot of cases. And so that's the one thing I love about Belmont as I've gone there is how much they do outside the classroom. And I see the students are different because of that.
Yeah.
They do so much more community service. Every class has a project, they're at an event almost every night. I mean, there's something they can do every night on campus. That is education to me, just as much as being in a classroom. And I hope that we as universities continue to change, to embrace the more experiential part of learning.
Yeah. If you can tie skills to people in college, through the communication, through, like empathy, whatever, I feel like I agree with that. If I paid for college and 4 years later I'm a different person, that feels right. That feels like a good measure of success.
Yeah, and I think, hey, learning math is hard, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to be good at that at 18, so you see a big difference. Engineering. I don't want my doctor to be 18, because they look at ChatGPT to get the answer, know. So there's things that we all know need additional education. Does everybody need it? I don't think so either.
No, I don't think so.
And I think I'm not saying something, how does the academic say that? Well, because I'm a realist. And I'm okay with that. And so yeah, I think that's my little bit of our thoughts on that one.
Well, you don't go to college to be an electrician. Like, you don't go to a 4-year standard college to become an electrician. You can become an electrical engineer, but there's still people that need to wire the buildings we're in.
That's right.
And that's a professional school, or at most an apprenticeship, maybe at best.
Mm-hmm. And to learn on the job is usually the best way to learn those kind of skills, and I think that's great. All right, I'm going to give us one last one because we're already at good time here, and go all the way to the bottom. And Cyrus Barasa, founder and CEO of Ashhaven.
I think it's Cyrus.
Cyrus? Mm-hmm. Okay. What did I say?
Cirrus.
Did I say Cirrus? Okay. Mm-hmm. I was thinking trying to make people's Apple devices go off or something. I'm going to go to his last one because I love this one. I'm going to use my funny joke to say this one. Okay. Are there any ways to tell if someone is lying with data? Okay. The answer to this one. How do you know if somebody's lying with data? Their lips are moving.
Oh.
But I'm pumped.
There you go.
Yeah, I did it. I had my terrible joke. I got it in at the end, but I got my terrible joke. The truth is, data is not perfect, right? Mm-hmm. But it can be transparent.
Yeah.
So if you have the ability to see the data, then that hopefully takes away that. So the idea, the curse and the beauty of data is what needs to be thought of when you think about that, because the truth is most people don't trust statistics these days because how they've been skewed in the political environment mostly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And so, or they're wrong, and people don't understand that you're taking a probability in exit polls, and you don't know why Trump beat Hillary back when everybody thought it was going to be Hillary. Well, the truth was, people were, exit polls were not the good representation of what was actually happening that year. That goes way much into statistics, but the truth is the data, if you can see the data, if we do a better job of transparency where the data lives and you have the ability to trust it, then you'll get over the lying component to it.
Yeah.
I do think it's also going to be harder because like ChatGPT, if you ask it a question, you get an answer. You don't know where the answer came from.
That's true, but you can also verify that answer.
That's true.
And so that's typically what I do is I'll go in and I'll ask a question, especially if it's like an obscure type question, and then I'll go on the internet and try to find the same answer separately, or if there's any other answers too. And Cyrus, you can go listen to Jen Duck's episode. So that was 17, right?
Yes.
Because she specifically talks about this, how data can be misrepresented. And that's not including like changing p-values or like, leaning into the data in a weird way. That's just straight up lying with data. It's like you can visually lie with data too, because I've seen bar graphs where, everything is basically the same. Like the difference between the top and the bottom bar is like 5 data points.
Yeah.
But they cut the first 30 off of it, and so there looks like huge differences because one bar will be 1 high and the other one will be 5 times higher. And they'll be like, oh, look, it's a big difference. But then when you look at the actual data, it's the difference between 31 and 35.
That's right. And in that case, and in every case, the data does not lie. The interpretation of the data is the lie. And in that case, what they're doing is skewing, making it look double when it's actually only 10% more.
Yeah.
And so it's an interpretation of it. And so you'll continue to get that. It's where I get a lot of people when I say I'm telling stories with data. They're like, I don't believe in that because you're just trying to persuade people. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm trying to tell the story of the data. And the data says this. You make the determination. That's a good story. It's not me saying, darn it, I take one side. Now, maybe I am doing that, but in most cases, I'm trying to tell the story of the data because, again, I'm usually objective when I'm telling stories.
Well, you also, that you bring up a good point because the objectivity is, you try to be as objective as possible, but it's still subjective. But then you also work with integrity. And the longer, so the data ultimately will not lie about your integrity. And so if you're a human being, and we've seen this recently with some of the news networks that have run into some troubles, we'll call it, they're intentionally lying about data, and they got caught. And so now nobody believes them anymore.
Yeah, and that's a good consequence, by the way.
Yeah,
and
it's absolutely great.
And so one thing I will be doing, we're doing a revamp of our website, and we're going to start putting our data projects on there. Our data is publicly available data, aggregated at certain levels, so it's not like I'm giving away anything that's PII, personal identifiable information. Everything that we have a visual, we'll have an ability to download the data to. So that's what I mean by the transparency. So if you want to see how I created it, or you don't believe me, here's the data.
Yeah.
And you can't do that in every case. You can't ask the hospital to give you, people's patient data, things like that. But, trust is built in certain ways. And so to me, it goes back to the trust issue. And I want people to trust what I say. Therefore, you got to put those types of procedures in place.
So let me ask you a question, because that's kind of the very first thing I thought about with regards to his question was like, how do you trust the person? How do you trust that they're not lying? And like in a vacuum where you could do it, them telling you what insights they drew is like fine. But then if they expose the data that they drew the insights from, then that's the only real way you can know. And so do you think that could become a standard when applicable?
I think so, because I think the ability to get within a corporate environment, let's say, like right now, if you're at a large company, you have no idea how to get data, and I think that can become easier over time, because prompting will be able to get you data in the future within your own environment. So I hope so. I do think it's a mentality. I think people don't trust data because they don't trust data.
That's
and
fair.
it's because what are they exposed to? They're exposed to politics and data.
Yeah.
They're exposed to, the things that now what they're going to do, hopefully, is see that data leads to good. Data tells better stories. They also realize that data doesn't mean numbers as much. Like colors on maps based on a heat map is just as powerful as a percentage or a correlation matrix.
Yeah.
So there's different ways that if we think differently with how we view data, I think we'll trust it more. I did get him, I think, different stuff. Yeah, I did. He's smiling at me behind the scenes here.
You almost said it by accident.
I did.
If you think different with data.
Yeah. Well, because, I live it. And I think that's the important part. It's why we have to have this podcast.
Yeah.
We got to get people to start trusting the data and then force the people interpreting the data to be truthful.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I'm right there with you. I think it's more like enable them to trust the data based off of their understanding of how it works.
Yeah, and when you're smarter, when somebody says crime is up, is it? And then you have to understand how you can quantify whether it is up or not. And is up meaning, okay, it's was 30% something, now it's 31%. Okay, it's up.
Yeah.
But that's randomness.
Yeah.
And so people, that's the kind of stuff that if we get a better data literacy, then I think trust will automatically occur.
Yeah. Well, that, to your point, like then force the data interpreters to be truthful.
Yeah.
Once people have the skill sets to tell, they'll stop, because this, like the news network that we were recently talking about, they've lost all credibility. Anybody associated with that network has lost all credibility. And so they won't do that anymore, hopefully, because I don't think they could afford to do that at this point.
That's right. Yeah.
That was one of I like that a lot, because if you lie on purpose, you're not going to be able to get away with it anymore. And the amount of evidence, and so the lawsuit that they settled on is a very, very hard lawsuit to lose. And they were going to lose it no matter, like it was the most slam dunk case, period, because they had all the data on every decision being made in the entire corporation.
Yeah. And again, you can lie to people when they don't understand they're being lied to.
Right.
And that's how you get away with it, right? If we have a better informed population, which we will, because data literacy is going to continue to grow, and all because of this silly little podcast. But the idea,
We're hoping.
it's going to happen anyways.
Yeah.
There's just too much data out there, and we know that's going to be the case. Then it's going to be harder because the data is going to be more available, and people are going to understand. They're not going to have to go do the data, but they're going to be able to understand it better because they're going to, kids today are learning that that's just part of their vocabulary where we had to learn it late in life.
Yeah.
Later in life, I should say.
We will be a data literate society.
Yes, and I think that will help a lot there. Okay, so definitely a lot of questions. I got to ask this question. What do you want to do for the next 10 episodes?
Well,
we're going to call it season 3.
We had a theme. The first season, second season was data in, and the third season, I think we worked towards well, you brought it up before. You like the number 4, and so you're talking about like you had the idea of doing data 4s.
Okay.
And I think that that's something we'll probably get into in the near future.
Yeah, I think some of the things that people have commented on that they like learning things that are simple. And so us just being slappy is great, but they also do enjoy when we teach them something.
Yeah.
And I think we have our personalities are now part of this podcast. We'll continue to talk about our data journeys. We haven't even talked about your toes.
I've got a whole update for that too.
We'll have to wait till season 3.
Yeah, so season 3 will be the toe update.
Gotcha. We're still going to do data ins because I think our data in stuff is probably going to be where we bring guests on most of the time.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I know that we have one coming up that, we love talking about nutrition and wellness. And so we're going to bring an expert on for our next episode. We're really excited about that. Sherry Traxler, who has her own podcast on this, is going to join us. And so we're going to probably, I think right now we're still going every 2 weeks.
Yeah. But we do, since you bring it, I thought that might be where you're going with this, but we do have a plan to go weekly.
We do. And it's called having the time. And so we're both.
Or making the time.
We're both thinking that we might get to that point within maybe season 4. We're there. We're going to hope.
The latter part of season 3, beginning of season 4.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes. All right. I'm trying to think what would be. I do want to do a data science 101. I'm going to keep it simple. I feel like I can talk about that in a simple way because people hear data science and I want to get them to understand what that really means.
So let me ask the listeners out there, are you interested in just straight education? Because Charlie Piggin is a doctor in data science or of data science. Actually, you're a doctor of what?
Well, my PhD is manufacturing management and engineering, so that doesn't count for anything. But I was a statistician coming out.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, you literally teach this stuff day in and day out. What would you like to learn from Dr. Piggin?
Ooh,
because I feel like I've learned a lot just sitting across the table from you,
and I as well from you. For sure. A ton. Gosh, I gave you major props on the processing of data.
Yeah,
and I thought I already knew what I was doing.
Yeah, and so you guys couldn't see it, but I did a big fist pump there.
Yes, we'll add that from one of our videos here. And the other thing that we're doing, we're going to continue to have fun.
Yeah. We
enjoy making the videos. We're probably going to be more active on social media now, because we are starting to figure it out. We're getting a process. We expect the formats to be about the same. We expect the same quality. And Jeremy, don't go away. We need you. And so hopefully season 3 will be a lot of the same, a little bit of new, and a whole lot of new technologies that we haven't even thought of yet. Because every time we talk about something, it changes the next week.
Yeah.
That means that we're going to be able to have topics for a long time.
Yeah, it's content generation is not going to be an issue.
That's right. We could do one just on Midjourney or just on Stable Diffusion. We could do one just, we've done one literally just on ChatGPT. There's going to be the newest thing. I noticed one of my iPhone apps, Drafts, which I mentioned is my way I capture, now has the ability to connect to the GPT or the ChatGPT API.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to see so many of things like that. Actually, a good friend of mine said, it's not going to be the ChatGPTs of the world that change the world. It's going to be these small little things that make your life easier. So it's like the boiling of a frog as opposed to the big reveal one day. It's slowly we add these things to our life. And all of a sudden you're like, You remember when I used to pay bills with a check?
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore. Remember when I used to have to actually open my phone and type into it?
Yeah.
Things like that are going to be major changes.
Well, that's how I look at life in general. Like most innovation is small incremental change.
Yep.
And from a personal perspective and personal growth, I try to take a step every day. And if you look back over 10 years, that step every day adds up to a lot.
So it sounds like we're at that point. So any parting shots, Charlie, for season 2, episode 20?
I have had a blast. That's about it.
So it's been an absolute blast for me as well. I love talking data, but what I love is that we're seeing this new world that's data and AI, and we're literally being able to talk about it while it's happening.
Yeah.
That has been incredibly fun, and I can't wait for the next 10 episodes.
Yeah, we're living in the moment right now.
Pretty cool stuff. All right, thanks everybody for joining us on the Data for All podcast. Remember, if you want to send us a note, that's at charlie@dataforall.io, or just go to our website, dataforall.io, and please hit that subscribe button. Help us get a couple more downloads. We absolutely appreciate it. We love talking to you. This is a passion, a hobby, a mission, whatever you want to call it. And we'll see you in season 3.
It's an inevitability.
So with that, I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Hubel.
And until next time.